You have felt it before. That strange moment when someone who claims to love you seems almost pleased when something goes wrong in your life. When your happiness makes them uncomfortable. When your success causes them to pull away. When your light seems to irritate them even though they swear they want the best for you. You could never name it before. You told yourself you were imagining things. That you were being paranoid or too sensitive. That people who love you would never feel that way. But deep down you knew. You felt the envy coming off them like heat from pavement in summer. And it confused you. Because you have never envied them. You have celebrated their wins. You have been genuinely happy for their joy. You have never wished them smaller or dimmer or less successful. So why do the people who claim to love you seem to secretly hope you fail? Carl Jung understood this dynamic better than most. He spent his life studying the human shadow. The parts of ourselves we cannot face. The qualities we reject in ourselves and then project onto others. And he discovered something that explains everything you have experienced. People do not envy you because of what you have. They envy you because of what you are. This is the part no one tells you. The empath possesses something that cannot be bought or faked or performed. You have a quality of being that others can sense but cannot replicate. An authenticity. A depth. A realness that makes people feel safe enough to show you their broken parts. And this quality triggers something in people who are not real. People who have spent their entire lives performing. People who have built elaborate personas to hide who they actually are. People who have become so disconnected from their authentic selves that they no longer remember what genuine feeling looks like. When these people encounter you, something inside them recognizes what they have lost. And instead of doing the work to reclaim it, they resent you for still having it. You have always wondered why certain people seem drawn to you initially and then turn on you later. Why they love bomb you in the beginning and devalue you once they have you. Why they seek your presence desperately and then punish you for providing it. Jung would tell you this is the shadow at work. These people are attracted to your light because something in them remembers what it feels like to be authentic. To feel deeply. To connect genuinely. Your presence awakens a longing in them for something they buried long ago. And at first, being near you feels like coming home. But then the envy sets in. Because they realize that while they can be near your light, they cannot become it. They can access your authenticity, but they cannot generate their own. They can feel temporarily real in your presence, but the moment they leave you, they return to the performance. And this fills them with rage. Not at themselves for choosing performance over authenticity, but at you for reminding them of what they gave up. For showing them, simply by existing, that another way of being is possible. For making them feel the absence of something they convinced themselves they did not need. You remember the moments when their mask slipped. When you shared good news and saw something flicker across their face before they remembered to smile. When you were vulnerable and they used that vulnerability against you later. When you succeeded at something and they found subtle ways to diminish it. These were not accidents. These were eruptions of envy they could not fully contain. Jung taught that we cannot change anything unless we accept it. But most people refuse to accept their envy. They refuse to look at the part of themselves that wants to tear down anyone who has what they lack. So instead of accepting it and working through it, they project it. They convince themselves that you are the problem. They tell themselves you are too sensitive, too emotional, too intense, too much. They create narratives where your authenticity becomes a flaw, where your depth becomes drama, where your capacity to feel becomes instability. They reframe your greatest strengths as weaknesses because admitting those qualities are strengths would mean admitting they lack them. And they cannot admit that, because that would require them to face their shadow. To look at all the ways they have betrayed themselves. To acknowledge that they have been living a lie while you have been living your truth. So instead, they pretend to love you while secretly hoping you fail. They stay close enough to access your light while working to dim it. They claim to support you while subtly sabotaging you. They say they want you to succeed while feeling relief every time you stumble. This is not love. This is envy wearing a mask. You have tried to understand it. You have twisted yourself into shapes trying to make sense of why people who say they love you seem to punish you for being yourself. You have made yourself smaller, dimmer, quieter, hoping that if you just took up less space, they would finally be able to celebrate you. But it never worked. Because the problem was never you. The problem is that your existence reminds them of their own inauthenticity. And no amount of shrinking will fix that. The only thing that would satisfy their envy is if you stopped being who you are. And that is the one thing you cannot do. Jung believed that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The people who envy you have not done this work. They have rejected parts of themselves, built walls around their authentic feelings, created elaborate defenses against their own depth. And they resent you for having the courage to remain whole when they chose fragmentation. Your wholeness is the mirror that shows them their brokenness. Your authenticity is the standard that reveals their performance. Your emotional honesty is the light that exposes their carefully constructed lies. And they hate you for it. Not consciously, perhaps. Most of them do not even realize what they feel is envy. They have convinced themselves they feel concern or disappointment or frustration. But underneath all those acceptable emotions is the truth. They envy what you have that they threw away. The ability to be real. To feel without performing. To connect without calculating. To love without keeping score. To be vulnerable without it being a manipulation tactic. To be present without an agenda. These are not small things. These are the qualities that make life worth living. And people who have lost these qualities while watching you retain them will always find ways to punish you for it. You have been carrying the weight of their envy without understanding what it was. Blaming yourself for their reactions. Trying to be less threatening. Less bright. Less yourself. But their envy is not your burden to carry. It is theirs to face. And most of them never will. The envy does not announce itself honestly. It arrives wearing the costume of concern. Of protection. Of love. The people who envy you will never say it directly. They will never admit that your light makes them uncomfortable. Instead, they will disguise their envy as worry about you. As advice for your own good. As attempts to keep you grounded or realistic or safe. But Carl Jung knew that what we cannot admit to ourselves, we project onto others. The person telling you that you are too sensitive is actually terrified of their own sensitivity. The one saying you are too trusting is angry at themselves for becoming cynical. The one warning you that the world will hurt you is furious that they let the world harden them. They are not protecting you. They are protecting themselves from the painful awareness of what they have become. You have heard it in 1,000 small comments. The ones that felt like concern but landed like criticism. When you shared your dreams and they reminded you of all the ways you could fail. When you expressed joy and they found reasons you should be cautious. When you showed vulnerability and they used it to prove you were weak. These moments were not love. They were envy dressed up as care. Jung taught that the shadow contains everything we have disowned in ourselves. For most people, authenticity lives in the shadow now. Somewhere along the way, they learned that being real was dangerous. That feeling deeply would destroy them. That vulnerability was weakness. So they buried those parts of themselves and built a fortress of false strength around the grave. Then they met you. And you were everything they buried. Walking. Breathing. Thriving. This is unbearable for them. Because your existence proves that the choice they made was not inevitable. That people can be sensitive and survive. That vulnerability can be strength. That authenticity does not equal destruction. You are living proof that they did not have to become who they became. And that realization fills them with envy so profound they cannot name it. So they do what Jung said people always do with their shadow. They project it. They make you the problem. They convince themselves that you need to change. That you need to be more like them. Harder. Less feeling. More guarded. More cynical. More fake. They call this maturity. They call this growth. They call this learning to survive in the real world. But what they are really saying is this. Become as dead inside as I am so I do not have to feel jealous of your aliveness anymore. You have felt the subtle ways they try to dim you. How they change the subject when you talk about something that excites you. How they find flaws in every person you care about. How they predict disaster for every risk you take. How they remind you of past failures when you dare to hope again. This is not wisdom. This is envy trying to pull you down to where they are. Jung believed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The people who envy you are unconscious of what they feel. They genuinely believe they love you. They tell themselves their criticism is helpful. Their warnings are protective. Their subtle undermining is just honest feedback. But their unconscious knows the truth. It knows they resent your capacity to remain open in a world that closed them. It knows they are angry that you still trust when they have become suspicious of everyone. It knows they wish you would fail so they could feel better about their own compromises. And sometimes, in unguarded moments, that truth leaks out. You have seen it. The flash of something ugly when you succeed. The barely concealed satisfaction when something goes wrong for you. The way they seem more energized by your struggles than your victories. The relief on their face when you admit you are hurting. These moments are glimpses of the envy they work so hard to hide. From you. From themselves. From everyone. Jung said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. The people who envy you would rather destroy your light than do the work to reclaim their own. Because reclaiming their light would require them to face everything they buried. All the pain they numbed. All the feelings they rejected. All the dreams they abandoned. All the ways they betrayed themselves. That work is hard. Tearing you down is easy. So they choose easy. They choose to stay in their performance while resenting you for being real. They choose to remain disconnected while envying your capacity for connection. They choose to keep their walls up while hating that yours are down. And they call this love. They convince themselves that staying in your life while secretly hoping you dim is somehow caring. That tolerating your authenticity while wishing you would fake it is somehow support. That keeping you close while undermining you is somehow friendship. But you feel the truth. You have always felt it. That is what being an empath means. You sense what people will not say. You feel what they will not admit. You know when someone's words do not match their energy. And the energy of envy is unmistakable once you learn to recognize it. It feels like being celebrated and diminished in the same breath. Like being told you are amazing while being treated as though you are too much. Like being sought out for your light while being punished for shining. Like being loved for who you are while being pressured to become someone else. Jung taught that the meeting with oneself is one of the most unpleasant things that can be avoided. The people who envy you are avoiding this meeting at all costs. And you are paying the price for their avoidance. But here is what you need to understand. Their envy is not about you. It never was. It is about them. About their choices. About their fear. About their refusal to do their own shadow work. You could be smaller, and they would still envy you. Because the problem is not your size. The problem is that any amount of your light reminds them of their darkness. You could be quieter, and they would still resent you. Because your quiet authenticity would still outshine their loud performance. There is nothing you can do to make them stop envying you except stop being yourself. And that is too high a price to pay for their comfort. Jung believed that the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. You have claimed that privilege. You have remained authentic in a world that rewards performance. You have stayed soft in a world that celebrates hardness. You have continued to feel deeply in a world that mocks sensitivity. And this makes you dangerous to people who have sold their authenticity for acceptance. Because you prove that the trade was not necessary. That another way exists. That they could have remained whole if they had been brave enough. Your existence is a rebuke to every choice they made to become less than they are. And they will never forgive you for it. But you do not need their forgiveness. You do not need them to celebrate you. You do not need them to understand you. You do not need their envy to transform into genuine love. What you need is to recognize envy when you see it. To stop blaming yourself for their discomfort. To stop shrinking to ease their resentment. To stop accepting fake love from people whose envy poisons every interaction. Jung said that where love rules, there is no will to power. The people who envy you are operating from will to power. They want to control you. To diminish you. To make you more manageable. More palatable. More like them. This is not love. And you do not have to accept it anymore. The empath who understands that they trigger envy in inauthentic people becomes free. Free to stop explaining themselves to people who are determined to misunderstand them. Free to stop performing smallness for people who are threatened by their bigness. Free to stop accepting crumbs of approval from people who should be offering celebration. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not too intense. You are simply more real than they are comfortable with. And their discomfort is not your responsibility. Let them envy you. Let them resent your authenticity while they suffocate in their performance. Let them wish you were different while you continue being exactly who you are. Let them pretend to love you while you find people who actually do. Because real love does not envy. Real love celebrates. Real love sees your light and wants it to grow brighter, not dimmer. Real love feels joy at your joy, not threat. And those people exist. The ones who do not envy your depth because they have claimed their own. The ones who do not resent your authenticity because they are authentic too. The ones who love you not despite who you are but because of who you are. Find those people. Keep those people. And let the envious ones fade into the background where they belong. Your light is not the problem. Their darkness is. And you are not responsible for illuminating people who have chosen to live in the dark.